the first thing that we're going to want to do is make a chain, and in this chain we're going to have 62 stitches. Something that you want to keep in mind when doing these chain stitches is to keep them really nice and tight. As you can see, it's actually kind of hard to get the hook through sometimes. You want it to be nice and tight, because if there's too much slack, once you actually have the bag made and there's weight being carried in the bag, then these stitches will kind of stretch apart if there's too much slack. As you can see, I can't really stretch them too much. That's because I'm making the stitches nice and tight. So that's what you want to do for yours as well. So like I said, we're going to do 62 chain stitches. And once I'm done with that, I'll come back to recording and I will let you know the length in centimeters of the chain, and then I will also tell you what to do at that point to continue on. I've just completed my foundation chain, and it's currently measuring at 32.5 centimeters. It's not incredibly important that yours is exactly 32.5 centimeters. It's just a good gauge for where you should be. The reason why it's not that important is because the way that we're going to be working, some of the techniques that we're going to be doing is going to change the dimensions later anyway. But like I said, that's just a good gauge for you to know if the chain stitches are about tight enough. So at this point, we're going to be bringing in the next colors. As you can see, I've placed the blue threads over the white thread with the tail ends to the right. And then you just go ahead and complete a chain stitch. When you complete that chain stitch, it will lock the blue threads into place like that. And then you'll be able to just work into not the stitch that you just completed, but the stitch to the left of that. And we're going to be doing modified single crochet stitches. And the other thing that you should know is that we'll only be working in the top loop. So when you have a chain stitch, you know, it's kind of like a V. You just want to be working into the top loop of the chain stitches for now and leave the bottom ones open for later. So go ahead, and if you've already completed one stitch like I have, then you're going to be doing 60 stitches after that. Stop after the 60th stitch and then we'll pick up from there, and I'll talk about what to do next at that point. Actually, something that I forgot to mention before we move on any further is that when you first start working on the foundation chain, stuff like this happening is very common. It just happens because you don't really have a good foundation yet, so the stitches don't really line up too well yet, and you know, everything gets kind of bunched up in the back. So as you can see, I can't really flatten it out. You can see the blue thread sticking through a lot, and then in the back you can see the yarn poking out everywhere. This is a really simple fix actually. All you have to do is, when you're still this early on and you're still pretty close to the beginning, you can take the thread on each side, so I'm starting with the light blue, and you can just pull, and that will get rid of some of the bunching, and you could do the same thing with the second color, and that helps a lot. You could still see it sticking through quite a bit. You can keep working on that until it's nice and smooth. But then what you're also going to want to do is you're going to want to hold on to the completed stitches with your right hand, and then hold on to the blue threads with your left hand and just pull. And since we're so close to the beginning, you can do that with the other side as well. And obviously these stitches are way too tight and way too close to each other, but it's really easy to just stretch them back out again, like I'm doing here. And so you could just go back and forth between pulling them tight and stretching them out again until you have a good combination of the stitches being close together but not too close together. That's just a little tip for you. And you're going to be doing it several times throughout the first round that we're working on here, and you're going to be doing it throughout the project as well. It's just something that kind of comes with the territory, and it's important to do, because if you fail to do it and there's bunching that occurs in the back here, first of all, you might be able to see it through the front, and second, the project just isn't going to lay as nice and flat as it should. So just keep that in mind as you're working throughout the project. Okay, so I've completed those stitches all the way across in the top side of the chain. At this point, you should have 61 completed stitches, including the first one that I did with you guys. So that means that you should only have the last final stitch to work through. And what we're going to do in this last stitch is we're going to use it to create a curve around, so that we can go from working on the top side of the chain to the bottom side of the chain. And the way that we're going to do that is by putting 3 stitches in the last chain stitch. So go ahead and do that. Notice that I'm kind of turning the base as I put each stitch in. And typically when I do this, the first stitch stretches out a lot. It's not a problem. Just take the white strand here and pull it back closed again. And then of course you're also going to need to pull on the colored threads to get everything evened out a bit. So once you've done that, the curve allows you to start working on the opposite side here. And the way that you're gonna do that is by working under these loops here that kind of look like a rope. So I know it's kind of hard to see in the camera because of the lighting, but here's a loop, here's a loop. This is the one that we're going to be working into here. So just go ahead and put your, it's coming open again. Oh, something I forgot to mention is that you can carry the white thread here just to keep it in place and to get it out of the way. I usually only carry it for maybe 5 to 10 stitches, and then I'll drop it, and later I'll trim it. But for right now, you can just carry it underneath the threads with the other 2 colors. So just go ahead and work right under the first loop that you see. And I'll do a few here. You're gonna do 60 total, and then once you're done with 60, once again we'll come back and work on the rest. Something that I want to mention is that when I'm working through these loops, I'm really only working through the loop itself. If you go in kind of like in a way that feels natural, there's a good chance that you're gonna pick up more than just that loop that's on the top. But if you go in there and kind of angle a bit to the right, you'll likely only get the loop on this like little rope like loop on your hook. And that's just a personal preference of mine. You can do it however you want as long as you get the stitches in there. It's just the way that I like to do it, but really, like I said, you could do it any way you like. So like I said, go ahead and complete those 60 stitches after the 3 stitches in this curve here. And once you've completed those 60 stitches, we'll meet back and I'll tell you what to do on the opposite end of the chain. Once you've completed those 60 stitches after the curve on the other end of the base, this is what it should look like. So you'll see here this stitch is the first stitch that we completed in the entire round. This loop here is from the chain stitch that we did to secure the tail ends of the blue thread. And then this loop here is the one that we're going to be working into. So since this first stitch is technically in this loop, that's already one of the 3 that we need to create the curve that goes around. So at this point you'll only have to do 2 more stitches to complete the 3. So there's 1 and there's 2. So now at this point we have the 3 that we need, which means that we're going to begin the next round. The next round is actually going to start with 2 stitches into the first space here. So there's going to be an increase in this stitch here. So there's one in the first stitch. Now into that same space complete a second stitch. Okay, so that is the first part of round 2 technically, and from there we're going to, so from this stitch on I want you to do 60 stitches. Once you've completed another 60 stitches, I'll start recording again, and then we'll pick up from there to figure out what to do on the opposite end. Once you've completed the 60 stitches after that increase stitch that we did, you should be at the point where you've reached the 3 stitches in one space, so the curve that goes around at the end of the base. So for those next 3 stitches, they're all going to have increases. So you need to do 2 stitches into each space. 1, 2. Okay, next stitch. 1, 2. And last stitch. 1, 2. Okay, so basically you just have 3 increases in a row, and that just helps to curve, or to reach all the way around the curve a little bit better. Now at this point you're just going to do another 60 stitches once again, 1 stitch in each space, and once you're done with that we'll come back and I'll tell you what to do on the other side. Once you've completed those 60 stitches, for the next few stitches we're going to be working on the curve. So for the first stitch we're going to be putting 2 into one space, so an increase. And same thing for the stitch after that, 2 in one space. And then after that, these 2 stitches that follow are the increase from the beginning of the round. I don't know if you remember, you don't have to remember, you could just follow along because it can be kind of confusing. In the next stitch you're only going to put 1 modified single crochet, and in the stitch after that you're going to put an increase. Okay, now don't finish this last stitch because at this point I'm going to change the color and I'm gonna go with light blue for this. So go ahead and finish it off with light blue, and at this point follow it up with another 60 modified single crochet stitches, 1 in each space. Once you're done with those 60, we'll pick back up again and we'll work on the curve on the opposite side of the base. Once you've completed those 60 stitches, from there you're going to want to do a modified single crochet stitch followed by an increase, so 2 in that next one, followed by a single, followed by an increase, followed by one more single, followed by one more increase. 1, 2. Okay, and that creates the curve. Don't forget to tighten it up. And once you have everything sorted out, go ahead and do another 60. Sorry about that. Once you have that all sorted out, go ahead and do another 60 modified single crochet stitches, 1 in each space, and then from there we'll talk about how to do the curve on the opposite end. Okay, once you've completed those 60 stitches, now we're back at the end of round 3. So this is round 1, round 2, and round 3. And this part is going to be a little bit weird because we are moving within the curve. We'll be moving from round 3 to round 4. So, but for now, what you're going to do is 1 stitch in the next space. In the space after that, you're going to do an increase, followed by 1 single stitch in the next space, followed by an increase. And then after this is where it gets a little bit weird, just because at this point is when we're technically moving into the next round. But the way that you're going to do it is you're going to do another increase, followed by 2 single stitches in each of the next 2 spaces. So it's not as complicated as it seems. It's a little bit hard to kind of grasp the concept of, you know, splitting the curve into multiple rounds, but that's basically what it is the first 2/3 of it we were in round 3, and then the last third of it we were moving into round 4. So I've actually already completed the stitch, but go ahead and undo the stitch because at this point we're going to be changing to dark blue for the next round. So go ahead and finish off with dark blue, and then do the next 60 stitches in dark blue, and we'll meet back after that. Now that you've done the first part of round 1, which it should be 60 of these dark blue stitches, you're at the first curve of the 4th round, and for this curve we're going to be doing first an increase, so 2 stitches in 1 space, followed by a single, then another single, followed by an increase once again, followed by a single, then another single, followed by an increase again, followed by 2 more singles. So once again, that's an increase, followed by 2 singles, increase, 2 more singles, increase, 2 more singles. So now that we've done that, go ahead and do another 60 regular stitches, 1 in each space, along the opposite side of round 4, and then we'll meet together again to talk about what to do on the opposite side. Okay, we're about to get into the easy part, thankfully. Once you've completed those 60 stitches, once again, we're going to work on this curve here. And the pattern for the curve is going to be increase, followed by a single, and another single, followed by an increase, followed by a single, then another single. And now for these last 3 stitches of the curve, or actually for the last 4 stitches of the curve, we're going to be doing just a single stitch into each one of them. And then after that, don't complete the last stitch all the way, because we're going to switch back to the So yeah, like I said, you're going to be using white, doing a single stitch in each space all the way around, which should give you a total of 144 stitches. Then once we complete that part, we can start working on the body of the bag. Okay, so now you've completed the base. You should have a total of 144 stitches in this 5th round.